Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books I read. This video is part one in a series that I have put together for my 50th birthday. Yes, that's right. I am turning 50 this month, April. And so I wanted to make a series of videos talking about 50 horror books that have shaped me. So I have broken it into different categories. There will be 5 videos with 10 books in each coming out every Wednesday in April. And the categories make sense to me. They might not to you, but that's okay, right? Because these are my categories. And the first category is going to be early books that shaped me when I was young and also classics. Some of those classics I read when I was younger or when I was in school, and some of those classics I did not get to until I was an adult. But at any rate, in this video, you will see early childhood influences and classic influences of horror and gothic novels that have shaped me. So the first book I want to talk about is called 13 Alabama Ghosts and Jeffrey. Now, I live in Alabama, if you couldn't already tell by my southern, drawl or accent, however you want to say that. But when I was probably in third or fourth grade, I checked this book out from the library and it really scared me. And after I returned it the first time, I then went on to check it out multiple times after that. And if that's not an early sign of a budding horror fan, I don't know what is. So, this book is about supposedly true ghost stories in different locations in Alabama, places you could go visit and see if you could catch a glimpse of the ghost. So, I'll read to you just some of the titles in the, you know, in what am I trying to say? In the table of contents here. Some of them, let's see, we have Death Lights in the Tower, The Faithful Vigil at Carlisle Hall, The Spectre in the Maze at Cahaba, The Phantom Steamboat of the Tom Bigby, The Unquiet Ghost at Gaineswood, Mobile's pipe smoking sea captain. That one interests me because I live close to Mobile. The Return of the Ruined Banker, The Red Lady of Huntington College, The Crying Spirit at the Well, and several others. The Red Lady at Huntington College always scared me a lot when I was younger, as did a lot of these. So, this is one of the pictures here. I'll just show you a few. And here is the Eliza battle, this phantom steamboat. So, one of the other things I wanted to mention to you, you're probably asking who is Jeffrey, right? Because this is 13 Alabama Ghost and Jeffrey by Catherine Tucker Wyndham. So, the author, Catherine Tucker Wyndham, claims to have a ghost friend, Jeffrey, who lives with her. And they kind of talk about these stories together, and then she shares the stories with her readers. And this book, as I said, kicked off my love and fascination with horror. So, the next book I want to talk about, actually, even though it is not a book that I read a lot as a child, I encountered it when I was a bit older, and then my kids have all enjoyed this one. And that, of course, is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this is a collection by Alvin Schwartz. And then, of course, you have the drawings, which are probably, if not more famous, at least as famous as the stories. And the drawings are by Stephen Gamel or Gamel. And just, I'll just show you a few illustrations. This is the bind up that has all 3 volumes of, and I'm not going to talk a lot about the books in these videos because we would be here forever. So, 2 of those out of the way. So, the next book that shaped me that I want to talk about is Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. I read this in middle school as a class assignment, and I can remember just the shock and the horror I felt at the end of that story. And that I don't think ever really left me. As many times as I have reread The Lottery over the years, it never fails to just gut punch me at the end. Shirley Jackson will be back on this list a little bit later, too. So the next horror author that shaped me, also in middle school, is Edgar Allan Poe. And if you don't know, I am absolutely obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe. I have I don't know, some may call it a shrine dedicated to Edgar Allan Poe, which I would need to, share with you. So I don't know how convenient it would be to do right at this moment, but I will put up a picture of my Poe shrine at the end of the video, and then you'll see how much of a love I have for Poe. So the first story that I read by Poe, again in middle school, was The Telltale Heart. And the first poem I read by him was, as you might have guessed, The Raven. And I was 100% absolutely and completely hooked on Poe. Over the years, I have learned more about Poe. I studied him again in high school, in college, in grad school. I was fortunate enough to be able to take a class about the American Renaissance and Romanticism movements. And so Poe was a big part of that class. And I got to write my final essay in that class on Poe. And I wrote about Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat. And now I teach a couple of Poe courses, and it's just one of my most favorite things in the world to do. So Poe definitely shaped and influenced me without a doubt. So the next classic I want to talk about that shaped me is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And this is a book that I did not get to until I was an adult. And this book is about Dorian, as you might imagine from the title. He's wealthy, he's young, he's very handsome, and he has a portrait of himself painted. And he wants or wonders what would happen if instead of his actual body aging, his portrait aged instead. But the portrait really becomes a manifestation of all of Dorian's, deep seated nefarious desires, all of his ugliness that's contained within becomes physically present in the painting. And we see Dorian descend into depths that end in tragedy. That's all I can say. I don't really want to spoil it, even though it's an older classic, obviously, but some people might not have read it yet. The next classic I want to talk about that helped shape me is Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So here we have Dr. Jekyll who would like to separate the evil part of himself so that he would no longer have to deal with those desires or feelings. But of course, as you can imagine, when he separates or tries to pull all that out of him, it manifests in the visage of Mr. Hyde. And we have murders. And again, in a similar way to the picture of Dorian Gray, questions about human psyche, about desires, about those parts of us that are at war with one another. Good stuff. The next book I want to talk about, and some may not say it's horror, but it's definitely gothic, and I would argue it certainly can fit into that horror category. Fight me. No, really don't. I don't want to fight. I'm 50. I'm too old to fight. So that book is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, where we have the tragedy of Catherine and Heathcliff and how their all consuming passion and obsession with one another lead not only to their tragedies, but also to tragedy of a lot of people around them too. But I love Wuthering Heights. And here's the interesting thing. I had to read Wuthering Heights in high school and I hated it. I hated it. Then I kept seeing the more I got into horror, circles as an adult and gothic circles, people talking about how wonderful this book is. And I was like, maybe I just need an adult, vision, a fresh set of eyes, a more mature, uh, you know, mindset going into Wuthering Heights. And I'm so, so, so glad I revisited it as an adult years ago because now it stands as one of my favorite books of all time. And obviously, a book that shaped me. And here it is on my list. The next book I want to talk about is Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. And I have an edition that was edited by Carmen Maria Machado. And Carmilla is a classic that I didn't come to as an adult. I said that wrong, that I did not come to until I was an adult. I was actually an adult before I ever heard of Carmilla. And we'll talk about that in a minute, why, and how Carmilla got overshadowed. But I absolutely, absolutely fell in love with this book, became obsessed with it, am constantly on the lookout for retellings and reimaginings of Carmilla. And keep that in mind because some of those are going to appear later in upcoming videos. But this book is about a female vampire, and it is about sapphic longing and desire. Of course, because it was written prior to Dracula, it's not doesn't really necessarily cast sapphic desire in a good light, but I can find ways to pull that out of the text. And excuse me, that's another reason why I really enjoy modern retellings and reimaginings that flip the script on what La Fanu did in the original. And I just absolutely, absolutely love the story of Carmilla. That leads me to the next classic, Bram Stoker's Dracula. I had read it, portions of it, I would say, as a young person, but I was an adult again before I actually delved completely into the novel. And I've read it, I think, 3, maybe 4 times as an adult. And I love it. I mean, what can you say? Bram Stoker's Dracula. I don't think I could tell you anything that you probably already don't know. But definitely all the gothic goodness, also diving into the views of the Victorian era of the angel in the house, the fallen woman, the fear of the other, um, Victorian fears about sexuality, particularly women's sexuality, right? So I have just the regular novel here, but I also have a Dracula manga. So Dracula definitely is a book that has shaped me. And because of Carmilla and Dracula, amongst other texts too, I have a huge, huge passion, and one might even say hunger or thirst for vampire stories. Going back to another classic, and this is my favorite classic of all time. Even though a lot of, you've seen a lot on this list, I love all of them. But my favorite is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. If you only know the film adaptations, you need to check out the novel. It's not what you expect if you only know the film adaptations, which I'm not knocking the film adaptations. That's fine, but the book is different. It's a haunting story about what it means to be human, about the responsibility of someone who creates something and then leaves it to its own devices, and questions about nurture and nature. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Sorry. So questions about humanity and about so many things. So just I don't know what to tell you if you haven't read it yet. And I know some people don't like it, especially some certain people in booktube circles that I won't say, but I love it. So let me just show you how much I love it if you couldn't tell. I have 6 editions of Frankenstein and would love to get more too. Every time I see a Frankenstein edition that I don't have, I'm like, oh, I need that one. But I'll show you the ones I do have. Here's one. Here's the Penguin Classic edition. This is the original Frankenstein, and this is Vintage Classics. And what's interesting about this one is that it has 2 versions. It has Mary Shelley's earliest draft, and then it has Percy Shelley's revised text. Okay, but let me just say, I actually love the poetry of Percy Bysshe Shelley, but he needs to just let Mary do her thing, right? Quit be trying to revise her stuff. But anyway, I do want to, I do like to know what he has to say. Then we have this particular edition. It's got one of those really soft like covers too. This is also a Penguin Classic. Then I have this beautiful painted edition. And on the back it says, "The world was to me a secret which I desire to divine." And then we have a Junji Ito manga of Frankenstein. Now, I hope I counted right and that was 10 books. If not, then you'll see a bonus book in another one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited to share 50 books that shape me with you. And I will see you in the next video. I would appreciate it if you would hit that like button, subscribe, hit that bell so we can talk about the books that we love and maybe some of the books that we don't love. Thanks again for watching. Bye.